Okay, good evening. My name is Sarah Shearer. I'm the president of the Albany Public Library Board, and I call this meeting to order. This is our special budget meeting. First order of business, or second, we're going to go over roll call. Rebecca, if you could just share the screen.
Sorry, one second.
Thank you. Again, my name is Sarah Shearer, and I'm the president.
Hi, Brenda Robinson, Vice President.
Did we lose Tom?
I don't see Tom, so I'm Jenna Patera, secretary.
Oh, Sarah, you're muted.
Sarah Dallas, trustee.
Bridget Pryor, trustee.
Ray Gauze, trustee.
Donna Dixon, trustee.
John Smith, treasurer.
Melanie Metzger, interim executive director.
Adam Stump, budget manager.
Rebecca Delgado, administrative assistant.
And Bob is not joining us this evening.
All right.
Oh, and Tom came back on. Tom, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Tom McCarthy, Vice President for Finance.
The next order of business is public comment. If we don't have to read these, that would probably be ideal because there are, I believe, 13 of them. They are attached to our agenda and they are public. So anybody wishing to review the public comments, this is on our website. And you're more than welcome to access those, but just due to the sheer volume, we're not going to read those at this time, but they are all concerning the mask mandate policy.
And just to note that there were 5 comments against the mask mandate and 8 for the mask mandate in support of continuing the masks. If anyone wishing to make a public comment, please email publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. That's all one word, publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. Or you can leave a voicemail at 518-290-6905. Both accounts are constantly monitored. Please leave your name and address to identify yourself. And there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting for public comments as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're going to go a little out of order now. Typically, we take up unfinished business prior to new business, but since this meeting is for the purpose of going over the budget, let's take up the 2022-2023 budget proposals.
Okay, well, if we can all take a look at the document.
Rebecca, do you mind sharing?
It's easier if Adam were to share his screen, just like we did for the committee. So it's much easier to follow along that way.
Okay, sure.
Sure, thank you.
All right, can we all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see, we've got 5 different proposals here. We discussed 4 of them at the last Finance Committee meeting. We did add on this last proposal which I'll get into momentarily. So we are looking to propose a tax increase this year. So we've given 1%, 2%, and 3.96% options, that being the maximum increase we can go for without overriding the tax cap. So as you can see, the amount of fund balance usage decreases with each proposal. So at the meeting, the possibility of taking a portion of the increase and applying it to our salaries lines was discussed. So we've done that in this fifth proposal here. We've edited to part-time salaries. That was the line that was more significantly below the projections of what we would consider fully staffed as far as our part-timers go. So we have added, essentially we took 1%, used the fund balance we would have had in that proposal. The remaining 2.9%, 2.96% was applied to the part-time salaries. And then also the payroll taxes. When salaries increase, the payroll tax expense increases as well. And so instead of going through this line by line, just to bring up a few key points in thinking about these proposals. So we haven't gone for an increase, a tax increase, since 2018. And actually, I have it right here. You can see our past budget votes since the May 13, sorry. The May 13 vote, since then, we've only had a total of 6.1% in tax increases. And so we have been able to operate within those budgets without dipping into our fund balance, but at this point it is starting to catch up to us. We do expect to use some fund balance this year. And so hence these proposals with the increases. So I'll just move straight to the impact of these proposed increases. So as you can see here, we have the projected increases for homestead properties based on their assessed values, 150K being sort of the standard measure. So you can see here the increases range from $2.39 a year to $9.47 a year for a property of that value. And of course, those values increase as the value of the home increases. And so I would like to just open up the floor to any questions. If there are any questions on specific lines, I'm happy to go over that again. We kind of did go over everything in a lot greater detail during the finance meeting, so I wanted to avoid doing that again. I think the basic points are here, though. We haven't gone for an increase in several years. You can see the impact is what it is here.
Can you highlight the area where you mentioned that we haven't used the fund balance, but we're expected to use the fund balance? So can you go back to that sheet and show what that expectation is and where it is?
Sure. So although our budgets in recent years have, the initially approved budgets have all projected fund balance usage, the way it has turned out for us year after year is that we are actually adding to our fund balance. So with our current budget year, the current budget modification, which actually is not on this sheet, we have the proposal compared to the initially approved budget, which factored in about 350,000 fund balance usage. I believe the current modification, it's over 500,000. We may or may not hit that level of usage, but looking at our expenditure lines where they are now, we do expect to actually tap into our fund balance this year for the first time in a number of years. And going into the next few years, I think we can expect that as well, unless we do go for more increases.
Sarah, I see you have your hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Two questions. The first one is, we're heating how many buildings? And were you able to factor in how utilities, gas and electric have gone off the roof? I mean, I see it in my home. You must be seeing it.
Yes. So we are heating and cooling 6 buildings. You will see in the upcoming board meeting, the January rates have skyrocketed. I was on the phone with National Grid today talking about this. I'm told the rates have gone back down in the last couple of weeks, but that is something I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on for the remainder of this fiscal year, and certainly going forward into the next fiscal year.
Thank you. And my other question is, because the governor vetoed the ebook legislation, we're discovering that EContent is very, very, very popular, but the cost of EContent is ridiculously high. What is it, $65 or more to lease a book for a year or two? But it's one of the fastest growing services. Was that incorporated in your collection development?
We took a fairly conservative book increase this year for any of our materials. We did do a small increase in digital content to take up for that, but we have always lagged behind with our book budget in relation with a lot of the Upper Hudson libraries. And so that trend will just unfortunately continue.
I would also add that we do get a fairly significant amount of funds from UHLS, specifically for the purchase of EContent. So some of that you'll see in the central library lines.
That's the central library line, but that's different, that you're buying that for the 2 counties worth of EContent. But as an Albany Public Library card holder, I believe Albany Public has titles available to us. I know Bethlehem does, Clifton Park does. So I don't know if we're in that model or not, Melanie.
For some of our content, what we do is first priority is given to our patrons. So if there's holds on materials, the holds for our own personally owned material will go towards our patrons first. But if our patrons do not have a hold on something, then it is opened up for the rest of the system as a shared catalog, as is with physical material.
Before I call on Brenda, just a small request, since whenever we're in shared screen view, I can't see everyone's screens. If you would like to make a comment, if you could use the raise hand function, that would help me out a lot so I could see everyone, because that jumps to the top of my screen. It's the bottom, the reactions button, and then raise hand. Thank you. Brenda?
Make sure. Thank you, Sarah, for mentioning the utilities, because that was one of the things that I was going to ask about. I mentioned about the usage of the fund balance, which is one of the reasons why we didn't ask for tax increases in the past. You mentioned that utilities, you contacted National Grid, utilities had went down. Can you share some other areas in which supports a tax increase?
Absolutely, yeah. The main lines that it boils down to are, of course, the salary lines, and then the building repair maintenance lines, maintenance service contracts, utilities. Maintaining 6 buildings, staffing those 6 buildings, those costs are continually increasing. We've seen somewhat drastic increases in maintaining the buildings, especially, and not only maintaining, but periodically upgrading them as well. We've seen a lot of increased expenditures this year in that area. And
So
staffing, go ahead.
No, finish. I thought you were, I'm sorry.
Okay, and staffing too. I'm sure if you ask our HR manager and our heads of branches, they will tell you that we are short-staffed. It has been difficult to hire, and there are a lot of vacancies, open positions that they would like to fill.
Yeah.
So if we are going to achieve that goal, that of course will require increased salary costs.
So we do want to remind, that's the issue I wanted to speak to. We do want to remind everybody that we have multiple vacancies open at the moment, and with especially within our facilities department, and currently under the current contract, it is under the $15 minimum wage that will be taking an effect shortly. It hasn't taken effect in this region yet, but it will. With contract negotiations, we do see that those will have to be raised, in addition to several other entry-level positions that are verging on that $15 an hour. So that's where we're potentially seeing that the staffing costs will be going up significantly in the next year and two. And as Adam stated, we have been woefully understaffed at all of our locations. We have, we really haven't been properly staffed for 7 buildings since we opened all 7 buildings. And it gets very dicey, especially we have found out during COVID. It's a great juggling act many times to make sure that the branches remain open, because we are contractually need 2 people in the building. And, it sounds like, oh, 2 people, but 2 people is our absolute bare minimum. And sometimes it's difficult to get those 2 people in the building because of sickness and illness and stuff. So it would be nice to be able to have 2 people call out sick and not have to worry about closing a branch. So we would like to.
Just to finish my question, because you mentioned about the hiring, you said willfully short-staffed. And we've had vacancies for quite a while dealing with different entities that we have to go through to get people hired. The vacancies aren't new, dealing with civil service and all of that. And speaking of that, what's going to be some changes or anything new, do you think, that'll get some of these vacancies filled, because they're ongoing? It's not new.
No. And that's just, benefits, it's pretty much what every other industry is facing right now. Raise in salaries, additional benefits, flexible time schedules. We have individuals who are, out in the world right now. That's, the big talk is the 4-day work week, and it would be lovely to be able to offer that, but that does incur costs. It's not just a one-to-one shift. And as a facility or an organization that is open 7 days a week, going down to a 4-day work week would be nearly impossible unless we had additional staffing to help fulfill those times. So those are the things, to make it a more desirable place. That's some of the things that we have to consider. The easiest one would be to raise pay. The other ones are going to require even more talk and more negotiation and considerations. And we don't know the financial impact of that, but that's why that line is our most significant chunk of the budget, is because that is where most of our costs go.
Thank you.
Before I call on Donna, I just also wanted to mention, since I think this also ties into the staffing conversation, I think we mentioned it at our last board meeting, but the Personnel Committee did meet with Civil Service And we are working on changes to the part-time clerk position, and we're trying to go back to civil service in March. So we're hoping some changes to some of the positions may also help in filling some. Donna?
Yes, thank you. As a follow-up to that, I just wanted to ask whether the delta between the $675,000 for part-time salaries, which kind of goes across the board and in every column, bumping up to 916, 715, is that a result, or is that a reflection of the increase that you just mentioned with the part-time clerk status and being ideally staffed or optimally staffed? Is that where that delta is coming from in the budget?
Yes. So we, that was where because that's where we're significantly, that's what happened this year, that is pushing us a little over into utilizing the fund balance, as we see that number was creeping up. So that is where we placed it. In all honesty, I think we would probably utilize a combination of full-time and part-time salaries in order to do that, because we do have some full-time positions that we would like to see created in order to fill the gaps within the organization.
Okay, so under the payroll and related costs budget projection, the 6,545,602 would be the optimally staffed with increases, correct?
I don't know if it would be optimally. I think we would still prefer more,
Right.
but it would be sufficient enough to get us so we don't feel like we're bleeding out.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that definition. That really helps.
And I do want to really quickly, I know it's kind of down in there. You'll see a significant chunk raised in publicity and printing from last year's numbers. We do want to remind everybody that that number, as well as some of the programming numbers, did go up this year, or projected to go up, primarily because, if everybody remembers, 2023 is our centennial. And we do want to, make that everybody aware of that we would like, you only get to celebrate your 100th birthday once every 100 years. And we would like to be doing some programmatic and some extra publicity. We will be obviously working along with the foundation, the Friends and Foundation, in order to help supplement that, but we will have some outlying costs as well that will be involved in that. And we do, even though it's 2023, we do see some of the outlying costs happening in the first and second quarter of 2022-23 in order to do some prep work. So like a new logo and promotional materials.
Tom?
Yeah, I guess Brenda already kind of asked this, but I just wanted to ask again, if we were to increase the salary number in our budget, do you actually feel like we can fill the positions in a timely way, or are we just going to continue to struggle to hire people?
I think that's sort of the big question. Both of these part-time and full-time projections are under what a fully staffed projection would look like. I mean, and at this point, we almost have to budget for positions going unfilled, at least for part of the year. And so that's why the 675 was used initially, and it is actually significantly under the total projection for part-time salaries that we have established if we were to be fully staffed for the entire year, which may not be likely.
Okay. And the other thing I just wanted to say, I should have said this at the top of our meeting, but these 5 columns are just suggestions that illustrate a point, illustrate different points along our tax options. But we shouldn't feel tied down by just these options, right? Like a 3% tax increase is not on the sheet, but it's something we could do. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that this is a spectrum of options. And I just wanted to remind you guys that the Finance Committee did not make a recommendation before this meeting, but we will after this meeting with all of your input. And so I just wanted to frame the conversation a little bit that way. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom, for clarifying that. That's helpful. Sarah?
Thank you. A few questions. Are we sure that the pilot payment is going to be 480?
So we just received our pilot payment for 2021. It was a little bit above 480. I believe the one we received in 2019 was also a bit above 480. The one we received in 2020 was closer to 450. We've had a hard time getting a solid estimate on what we can expect year to year. But we felt confident using 480, considering that was the amount we've got to in the last 3 years, 2020 being an unusual year.
And a question about the New York State grants. So it's your central book aid, your, what is the other one? CBA, library book aid, which is going to roll into one. And the other amounts are construction grants?
The other piece of that line is actually the LLSA grant, which we also get from Upper Hudson. And then, yes.
No, you get it from the state, not from Upper Hudson. And just for people to know, if we had full funding of your LLSA, that would be 31 cents per capita. That blows my mind. So what is it, 28 cents per capita? I just wanted to share that dismally low number. Thank you.
I should say we get the checks from UHLS. But
Yeah.
yes.
And if I may, just really quick on that note, just as a reminder to everybody next week, it is Advocacy Day on March 2nd. So if you would like to participate, let me know and I will let Upper Hudson, it's all virtual this year. But that's a perfect opportunity to promote us getting fully funded on that.
I'm
Tom,
there. I'm vocal. I'm sorry, Sarah, but I think 31 cents per capita is ridiculous.
Does anybody else have any questions on the budget? If we don't have questions, we may want to move into a discussion on what, Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Finance Committee, I know you said, Tom, that this is just a range. What was your committee's recommendation for an increase?
So I would say we didn't try to answer that question at our last meeting. We reviewed this budget, line by line, and talked about why these numbers were being recommended. And we just came to the consensus that we wanted to hear everything that the full board had to say, because we didn't think it made that much sense to make a recommendation before you guys had even really seen it. So I would like to talk a little bit right now about what the board feels. And we don't have to come to any conclusions today, but it would be, I think, helpful for our committee to hear a little bit about what you guys think would be best. And then when we meet again, we'll try to synthesize everything we talked about today, and then our committee will make a recommendation. And at the March meeting, we'll bring that recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Tom. But oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna offer my thoughts. I mean, I do think we need a tax increase because we don't want to use too much fund balance at one time. But I think it's also totally okay if we do use some fund balance, right? I don't think we should be too afraid of using some amount of fund balance. But I do think because we have had such a good record of keeping our tax levy flat for a long time, I think we have a strong case to make to the community that we will put their money to good use, and that this is a once in 3 years increase. So I think one of the middle options for tax increase, one of the middle columns for tax increase would be where I would tend to lean.
Thank you. That's helpful. Donna.
Thank you. And thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. And I'm pretty much in the same ballpark as you are. I just wanted to clarify that one of the pieces of data that we did not have at the last Audit and Finance Committee was the tax impact per 100,000 per assessed value. And that was one of the things that I think we all really felt like we needed to see to be able to make a recommendation. And so this data is really, really helpful in terms of thinking about, what would be the impact on, the average household, and looking at, bringing it to taxpayers and to voters, and how would we explain that? Those are data points that were really very necessary to have, and very welcome to have here. So I am, looking forward to hearing everyone else's reaction, and also thinking that, yes, it is okay to spend part of the fund balance. That is what it's there for. And again, we're coming out of another extraordinary year.
Do other trustees have any questions or comments, would like to weigh in on thoughts at this point?
I did have a question in regards to the unions. Once you meet with them, since we're talking about payroll and their asks and their increases to their contract, how would this impact, or would it change the percentage of what we're looking at, the proposed budget and the increases?
So right now, we have not started contract negotiations without a director and losing our HR manager next week. We're on a holding pattern with that at the moment. We'd like at least one of the two of those in place before we started full contract negotiations. I haven't heard from the union specifically. There have been no stated demands as of yet, but just what we're hearing from staff, the biggest concern is especially the facility staff, because it's been nearly impossible in the last probably 6 months to hire anybody in that position, because that is under the $15 an hour, which most other businesses are using as their baseline. So we don't have, I'd like to say our benefits and our working environment are wonderful reasons to work for APL, but it doesn't put food on a person's table, and the money does. And so I think, that will definitely be part of the discussion coming forward from the contract negotiations. And then there's always the consideration, well, if we raise one level, do all levels get raised? So we don't know where that is going to lie. I always like to tell people there's the intent, there's the theory of what can and cannot be done, but then there's the reality of when things start getting discussed, where people are going to request. So we don't know. This is all, I'd like to say we have exact numbers, but without that negotiation, we don't know where that would lie. it could be a potential that if we do raise these, there will be more fund balance used. If salaries do raise, because this is going off of our current openings and our current vacancies. So that number could rise and we could not, there's a potential that we couldn't add the positions. We just don't know yet.
Thank you.
Yep. As I'm keen on saying for most people, you know, unfortunately, this is a finite, whatever decision we make, it's a finite budget. It's very difficult, you know, to find money magically. It's impossible to find money magically to pay for something. So ultimately, if something goes higher than we were expecting, it has to give someplace, whether that's utilizing the fund balance more or cutting back on other lines. With a budget modification, something will have to be done should those numbers veer too far off from what we have.
Would other trustees like to weigh in? I don't mind sharing while everyone else considers. So I'm at a 2% increase right now, and that is due to concern of public perception. So when the property tax cap was originally passed and enacted, I feel like there was this misnomer that was stuck to it, that it was a 2% property tax cap. So even though there's a really complex mathematical formula behind it, and our tax cap for the current year or next year's budget is 3.96, and we would be staying within the tax cap, I think it might be hard to explain to voters that 3.96 is within the tax cap. Adam, could you pull up that page you were showing us before with
Sure.
all of the past year budget votes?
Yep.
Because from what I remember, let's see, if we go down like May 2012, 2.6, it was a 62% to 37%, which is lower than the approval rates in recent years, like 2017 and 2018, when we went out for a 1.5 and a 2%, and we had voters vote it up by 73 and 75% respectively. So because if we go out for a higher increase, I'm concerned that it has the possibility to get voted down. And then I believe we revert to our current tax levy and we wouldn't get any increase. So I would kind of propose taking a 2-year strategy, considering a 2% this year and an additional 1 or 2% the following year, to have a hopefully higher likelihood of getting passage by voters. But those are just my thoughts I wanted to put out there. Of course, open to what everyone else thinks as well. I just wanted to share that perspective.
I'm just sitting here trying to figure out how we pay our facilities staff at reasonable rates, which is not the conversation, but.
Same here, same here.
I see hands. Jenna, did you have other comments you were going to share?
No, I should have
Okay.
raised
No,
my
it's,
hand.
It's okay. Just wanted to check. Donna, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Sarah, thank you for bringing up the point about the perception of the tax cap rules versus, how it actually works. And I, absolutely agree on taking a longer game strategy on presenting this. I think that, everybody's been through a lot financially in the last couple of years, and to take it in a little bit more, smaller steps, I think is something I could really get behind. So thank you.
Sarah?
Thank you. How much are we going to be chipping away at the fund balance? Is my first thought. My second thought is the most important resource the library has is its staff. The staff is the public face. They're the ones that deliver services. And if anything, I like to err on the side of providing staff a livable salary. I'm wondering if almost 4% is too much. I think 2% might be too little. I'm thinking 275, just to give the cushion to make sure people who work in our facilities have a livable wage. And I don't know if this is if the budget doesn't pass, it does go back to the last budget that it passed, but it doesn't mean we can't go out for a second budget and then come back down.
So that is the case, but don't forget that if we do a second budget vote, then we have to pay for the vote, because right now we're attached to the school district vote and it's done as an agreement with them. So if we did have to go out for a second vote, that I believe, Adam, do you remember? I think is it 50,000, 30 or 50,000 to run that second vote.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I know we looked it up prior, but it is significant charge.
And the last time the vote it really went down was when it was I thought a ridiculous 25% increase.
Correct.
But the fact that we haven't gone for little increases, and I understand why we didn't do it, I think 275.3 is doable.
Sarah, I actually have a follow-up question. 275, and then would you, are you proposing we decrease the amount of fund balance we're using, or use the same amount of fund balance, and this would be a modification of the fifth proposal, which is tax increase and salary increase?
I think to make it fair, my goal is to have a fair salary, and having less than 2 people in a building is just not safe. And if you look at libraries like Pine Hills, where even if you have 2 people there, there's so many nooks and crannies, as in Howe, and Washington Avenue is huge. And I don't want to be looking at possibly reducing hours or closing branches at all. So I'm not as familiar as I should be with the budget, but the other rule of thumb is in our reserve budget, if for some reason we didn't get our tax funds for one reason or another, how many months can we keep going with the reserve budget?
Well, I suppose it sort of depends. Our total fund balance is approximately 5 million right now, with 2.5 of that being assigned for capital fund reserve, and the other 2.5 being assigned to unrestricted and restricted fund balance. That doesn't mean we have $5 million cash that we can pull from at any point to pay for operations. A significant portion of that is in our investment account. So we would have to pull out of investments early to get some of that cash. I don't know that I can give you a number as far as how many months we'd be able to operate. There's a lot of variables there that would go into that.
When you talk about a fund balance, at least the fund balance should have enough money in it, in my thoughts, to be able to bridge. If we have $5 million and some of it is allocated, we have a payroll that's almost $4 million. It's not really a very generous, I mean, it's a lot of money. Please don't get me wrong. It's a lot of money. But when you look at the budget, it isn't as big a fund balance that makes me comfortable.
So typically with a fund balance, you want approximately 10%. Usually what I've read in most with most nonprofit organizations, you want about 10 to 17% of your operating budget in your fund balance for emergency purposes. If we went out for a budget vote and it got declined, it wouldn't be set to zero. We'd obviously be just back at what we are today for our budget. So it wouldn't be an increase, but we would still get the 7 million tax levy. It would just be the exact same tax levy we just got this year, plus the pilot payments as normal and stuff. So it's not necessarily a zero-sum game that if we don't get the budget increase, we go to a zero budget. So it's more for emergency purposes, and we could supplement our discrepancies with staffing with it. But if we had to increase staffing by $1 million this year without going for a tax increase, that's $1 million coming out of our fund balance.
Melanie, your hand is next. If you were just responding to the question, do you have an additional comment?
I do. I just got confirmation that it was about $50,000 to
vote,
run our
okay.
own, to do our own vote.
Brenda?
Hi, I just had a comment for my understanding. Not asking for a tax increase, I don't believe will close branches. So I don't want people to think that if you don't ask for a tax increase, that means closing branches, or in regards to vacancies, we've had ongoing vacancies for quite a while, and it's been ongoing. So I also wanted to make that point. I also wanted to mention that, yes, we do have a fund balance, and even utilizing that fund balance, we carry it, and I don't think we should be afraid to use it. But not asking for a tax increase does not mean that we will solely rely on all of a sudden it's the fund balance. So I just, I listened to some of the comments, and I just didn't want to just walk away with the thought of not asking for a tax increase would mean that, oh, we probably close branches and all these other things. I didn't want that to be a takeaway, but I sure would like to hear more of, if you ask for that tax increase, what that actually means. So we hear a lot of hypotheticals, but and of course, forecasting is exactly that, forecasting. But in recent years, we've had fund balances and funds that went underutilized, or we didn't go over that particular amount of money in the budget, which is why previously we did not ask for a tax increase. So I just wanted to share my comments.
Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of to reiterate what Brenda said, we've many years in a row now planned to use fund balance and then have not ended up using it because we weren't fully staffed all year, so we spent less on staff, and or other things happened where we got extra grant money or didn't spend where we thought we would. So we do tend to use less fund balance than we plan for, which is good. That's how we should plan. But we also can't count on that happening because different years, different things will happen, obviously.
And I do want to remind people, I think the elephant that people are forgetting that's in the room is the pilot payments. And that hasn't been part of our budget for more than 5 years. We've only been accepting the pilot payments. So that was almost $500,000 influx additional. And that's also why we've been able to supplement and not have to go for the tax increases, is because we did, where we were projected to use fund balance, the pilot payments were able to fill in that gap for us, because that was additional funding throughout several of these years. So I do want to make that statement as well, that yes, we didn't use fund balance, but we had pilot payments to help kind of bolster that part of our budget a little bit. So it's now has caught up to us where, there is inflation. Everything has increased in price. Books are increasing in price. E-materials are increasing in price. Salaries are going up. Insurance is going up. It's to not increase our budget after 4 years just because we haven't and we've been good doesn't mean we can continue that trend.
So I guess what I'm thinking now is I have a few asks for staff, if possible, documents or things that would be helpful. So in terms of, I guess, the budget proposals first, I'm hearing a few trustees express interest in the middle numbers. Would it be possible to come up with a proposal in the middle and increase the staff number just so we can see what that looks like with the fund balance? I think that would be another helpful option. And then in terms of information that I would like to see, we keep coming back to staffing. Is there a way to maybe do a one-page document showing current staffing, how many of each position we have filled currently, how many are vacant? Because I've heard two things with the increase in staffing costs. I've heard one being unfilled positions, current unfilled positions. And secondly, I've also heard the potential of creating new positions, which would help alleviate the workload, but those positions aren't currently created. If I could see a breakout of current unfilled positions, what they are and what that would total, and potential positions you're thinking of creating and what that totals cost-wise, I think that would be really helpful.
We actually have a baseline for that document because we've been working on it ourselves. So
perfect.
Can you also add the length of time of the vacancies?
Sure.
That's helpful. Thank you, Brenda. Jen,
no, I will. Can I just really quick, I just want to make a caveat with that last request. Please understand that we have a lot of people that, so if a position opens up at Arbor Hill, there potentially is a person from Howe that wanted the transfer, so they moved into it, and it creates a new opening. So it might be that the opening for a part-time clerk district-wide has been open for 5 years, but it's only going to show up as being open for 6 months because it's been filled with people transferring and stuff. So I do want to give that caveat that I'll try to pull the information you're looking for, Dr. Robertson, but by the way our payroll system calculates, it might not be as helpful as we think we are, but I will try, definitely.
For a long time at our personnel committee meetings, we were getting like a census, kind of like a staff tree, where it wasn't names, it was just like, and so that might be useful too. And that was just me thinking out loud. But the one point I want to make is, in the time that I've been on the board, I don't think that staff has come to us and said we absolutely think that it would be important to our operations to have an increase to the levy. And this is the first time I've heard that. And to me, that's of consequence. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
Would any other trustees like to weigh in or share their perspectives, thoughts, or questions? I do see that it is 7 o'clock. We do have a couple other items of business to attend to. So last call on comments or questions. And then I believe the Finance Committee is going to be meeting again between this meeting and our next meeting, and will come to us with a recommendation.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate this. This is helpful to understand where you guys need extra information as well. I do want to thank you, everybody, because as many of you are aware, this is mine and Adam's first time doing this solo. So there's always been a director above me, and there was the last time we went out for a budget increase, there was a position above Adam as well. So this is our first time. So thank you for catching the little things that we have missed.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting multiple options for us. All right, if we can pop back to unfinished business. I believe we agreed at our last meeting that we were going to come back to the mask mandate discussion. I wish I had the minutes in front of me, but I believe we motioned to keep, oh gosh, I'm going to pull it, but while I do that, I see this document up. Melanie, would you like to go over this?
So yeah, so during the last meeting, the meeting at the beginning of February, we said we were going to keep the mask mandate at least for this next 2 weeks until this meeting. And we wanted to poll the staff to get their concerns and comments regarding the mask mandate. And then as I talked to Sarah, she actually had a wonderful idea to also poll them 2 weeks afterwards to make sure, since the governor's rescinding of the mask mandate was going to affect the next day. Yes, we were getting everybody's opinion that day, but we wanted to give them 2 weeks afterwards, after having to interact with the public and find out if there was any additional information. So I have what you see here, or attached to your things. Can you go back to the first one, Rebecca? The 20, there we go, thank you. So when we polled everybody initially, we gave them a couple days to fulfill the survey. So we actually gave them, I think, 4 days. It went from February 10th to February 14th, and these were the results. We did have 97 staff members respond, primarily for our frontline staff. We did want to differentiate who was answering this, frontline staff versus administration staff, because the frontline staff are the ones who are primarily interacting with the patrons, where the administration staff are generally office staff. So we asked them, would you want to keep the APL mask mandate in place for as long as the CDC is recommending indoor mask wearing, which we are currently doing, or did they want to align with the governor's rescinding of the mandated mask wearing indoors for businesses? So individuals would then have the option to choose whether to wear a mask or not. And as you can see, there was a 75% in favor of keeping the mask mandate as of that first go around. And on that page, you can see the staff comments as well. And they were very well thought out comments on both sides of the issue. Thinking of the children, many people wanted the CDC, many people wanted us to have a solid set of metrics. So not necessarily aligning with the CDC, but having a strict set of metrics that we would follow. People felt safer. There were a couple staff members who did state that, they would consider resigning should we remove the mask mandate, because they just didn't feel safe in the current situation with society right now. So, please keep the staff or the mask mandate in place. And if you go down to the bottom where I do have the responses of those individuals who would prefer not to have the mask mandate, once again, really well thought out for the most part. Some were a little verbal and kind of yelling at us at the time, but you know, what we brought up before, there was, you know, the first one, there have been numerous incident reports related to masks wearing over the past 2 years. They're getting fatigued on having to deal with this on a daily basis and such like that. So, you know, some people say, you know, we're vaccinated. We think, you know, we should trust the vaccines. It's individual choice. They don't mind us getting rid of the mask mandate as long as we keep all of our other PPE and the shields up, because right now we have the plexiglass shields at most of the desks. So, you know, it went both ways, but for the most part, like I said, it was a 75-25% split. If you go to the one that we did yesterday, we figured yesterday would be the latest we could do one. We're still, you know, got 63 people responded this time, but we only gave them the 1 day to respond because we wanted to get the latest information. But we're still at essentially the 75-25%, a little more towards not mask wearing, but not by 0.5%. So it's really kind of negligible. For the most part, once again, the one change I did make is if I had where the questions comments were, in the first one, I accidentally made it mandated that people responded. So everybody felt the need to respond. That's why there's a lot more responses. This go around, I made it optional because if they didn't have anything further to say, I didn't want to force them into saying something. So once again, you know, there's a high concern for staff members who we know are unvaccinated, not due to a choice, but due to being immunocompromised, and so they feel like the need to protect others, not only on staff but for the public as well. They would like us to align with the CDC school district, and so on and so forth. You know, still want to make it comfortable and safe for everybody. And then going through those who don't want to wear masks, there were a couple who stated, you know, before I voted to keep the masks. Now, after the couple weeks, I would prefer not to. I think it's up to let people make that decision for themselves. It's the effectiveness of mask mandate will offer little increase in mask compliance, and so therefore, you know, how are we going to, you know, especially if the CDC changes its guidelines. I do want to state that we also wanted staff to keep track of incidents and responses from the public over these last 2 weeks in regards to anybody who came into the building who was told that they had to wear a mask and how that they were responded to it. Obviously, the vast majority, way vast majority of people wore the masks, no issues. Essentially, we had about 36 individuals or 38 individuals who were disgruntled that just kind of, oh, I got to wear a mask. Okay, whatever. 6 individuals across the district were what we called aggressively annoyed. They would, you know, why do I have to wear a mask? You know, this is a stupid thing. They would get kind of up in our faces, but eventually would wear the mask and move on. We had 3 instances of verbal threats. And thankfully no physical threats. We did have one person when it was kind of noted after the fact that we were doing this, and we did have signs out that said, you know, welcoming public comment because this is something we are considering. One person wanted it specifically stated that they come to APL specifically because we are one of the last places that do require masks, and they feel safe coming into the library, so they wanted it known of that as well. Over the course of these past 2 weeks, we've handed out 15 boxes of masks to individuals, not like full boxes, but we've gone through 15 boxes of masks, which is about 50 masks in each box. So if we do that over the course of 2 weeks, if we are continuing that, that's an additional, you know, cost as well that we have to take into consideration, and that's just to the public. That's also not what we are providing to staff as well. So, and when you, as we was stated at the beginning of the meeting, looking at the public comment, those were the public comments we received via the public comment email and the phone number. But we also had been monitoring our social media when we did say, you know, post our on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, you know, by the way, the mask mandate is in effect. Predominantly, it's once again, it's reaching about that same number, 75% in favor of us keeping the mask mandate and 25% stating that they would like it to be optional. I do want to mention for anybody who happens not to be following the news as minutely as we are here regarding the situation, both the CDC and the governor are planning on making recommendations next week. Those of us in administration, we have a team kind of working towards recommendations. It's our recommendation that we actually put this off 2 more weeks, just because with the changes that are happening, that potentially have or will be happening next week with the governor and the CDC updates, it could vastly sway which way the board wants to go. And we figured 2 more weeks, knowing that 75% of people and staff and public are supporting us with the mask mandate, that 2 more weeks would be a reasonable accommodation to make a decision.
And I did go back to our last meeting just to check the motion. This was where we had made a motion to follow what New York State does, and that motion failed. So instead of adopting a motion at our last meeting, we reverted to our current policy, which is mask wearing. So that's where we currently stand. If we don't do anything tonight, we're still, the policy is still mask wearing at the library. Donna?
And we do want to,
Melanie?
sorry, I do want to make a comment that the first school in the region kind of caved today. Bethlehem School District did state that they are going to be rolling back. They're not going to be as stringent. I shouldn't say they are removing the mask mandate completely. It's still going to be required in classrooms, but they will allow lunchtime conversations, outdoor on the playground, no masking, and some group work or small group social distance, non-masking. So they had, that came about 3 o'clock this afternoon. It came pretty late.
Thank you. Donna?
Yes, Melanie, thank you so much for that summary of all of the data. And I also saw the news about Bethlehem. They are retaining the indoor requirement with some relaxation in certain situations. I also, I looked at our peer libraries, or all of the libraries in Upper Hudson, and then some peers outside of Upper Hudson as yesterday, and the results of that were that 42% of them still had a mask mandate or indoor masks in place. 3 did not, and 12 did not explicitly state on their website whether or not they had a mask requirement in place. Clifton Park still does, Saratoga still does. So I just wanted to share that with trustees, and certainly that reflects the data that we gathered from staff and from public comment. So I agree with another couple of weeks, and especially we now have another emerging variant. I forget what it's called, B2B or something.
Yeah.
It all happens so fast, but I agree with you, Melanie, that another 2 weeks and leaving what we have in place is I'm absolutely on board with.
Brenda?
Thank you for those comments. I just want to share that I'm in support of keeping the mask mandate.
Me too. And I think in the future, next time we do consider this, we can consider like intermediate measures. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be, masks in some spaces and no masks in other spaces where it's more safe or whatever. But that's for another day. But for now, I think we should continue to keep it.
Sarah?
My concern at our last meeting was putting the frontline staff in an uncomfortable position. But by the surveys that you did, Melanie, it doesn't seem as dire as I was predicting it or imagining it to be. And I'm sorry that some staff had to deal with some disgruntled people, but it wasn't to the level and the number that it could have been. So I'm also in agreement. Let's keep everything as is for 2 weeks.
And I do want to, there was one library that was gave me a rundown of almost every interaction. They only had a couple, but so they gave me the rundown. But one of the interactions was, even though there was a disgruntled patron who was kind of vocal, who kind of hit that second level, I was told that individual was extremely respectful and was very excited. And I believe that person has actually submitted public comment because they were extremely excited to hear that the board was taking public comment. And from what I think it's not identifiable, but it is, I believe, one of the public comments that is stated. And it was very well thought out that, while this person individually does not agree with it, if they're in the library, they will wear a mask. So I think we also verge on that too. There's some people who don't agree with us, but they understand. And
Brenda? We're good. Would any other trustees like to weigh in? Oh, Brigitte, was that a hand? Okay.
Yes. I can't find the hand or the raised on my computer.
That's
but-
okay. I can see everyone right now.
I appreciate everyone's public comment and also the staff taking the time out to respond to the survey. I am also in agreement to continue the mask mandate and revise it in 2 weeks or revisit that topic. But I'm confident knowing that, you said 75% of the frontline staff was also in agreement that, and the thank yous that we received from the 8 to 5. So I'm very confident that we did the right thing. And some people even stated in their comment that we looked at the human aspect of it and people we took in consideration. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Would any other trustees like to weigh in? So far, I'm hearing all trustees who've spoken have spoken in favor of keeping masking, which would not require a motion at this time. So I just want to make sure before moving on to the next item of business that no trustees have a motion to make at this time.
Thank you for conducting those surveys. Those were extremely useful.
thank you. Like I said, my staff was very happy to have the voice. They were very thankful that you gave them that respect to voice their concerns to you. So.
All right, I think we're moving on to the next item. The next item is meeting locations. At our last meeting, the motion we made was to continue meeting remotely for this meeting and committee meetings through this date if the executive order was renewed. The executive order was renewed. It runs through March 15th. However, our motion was only good through meetings tonight. So if we would like to continue meeting remotely for any committee meetings after this point or our March 8th board meeting, we'll need another motion to do that. Sarah?
I move to, yeah, We got it. What you said, Brenda and myself.
You wanted to state through the executive order?
I think that's the better way to do it because it seems like it's being extended every month. And when the executive order changes, because it's in law that we can hold the virtual meetings now.
Yes, there was a law passed at the beginning of this year that said, as long as the executive order is in place, the state of emergency, that we continue to have the option to hold meetings remotely. As soon as there is no more executive order, that's when we lose the ability under law.
Unless we're willing to put our personal addresses. There is an
Correct.
option too.
Yes, it will revert to the old OML open meetings law language. And not just put our personal address, but open our, wherever we're taking the meeting from would have to be an open meeting space, and we would have to invite people to wherever we are.
That's what you said.
At dinner at your house.
Ernie would love it. Ernie would love it.
So I believe the motion is to allow the board to continue meeting remotely for both board meetings and committee meetings through the expiration of the executive order, something to that effect.
Okay. And Sarah,
and that
the motion was the first.
I beg your pardon?
Sarah, did you make the first motion?
And Brenda, you seconded?
Is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't always look at my camera view with 4 docs and all that. Apologize. All right. 4 docs online voting is open. Motion passed, but I'm trying to share it with you. So sorry. Here we go.
And the motion carries. Thank you. And the last item of business, I had emailed the board the other day explaining the need for an executive session. So if somebody would like to to motion us into executive session, Jenna, for the purpose of appointing or discussing, appointing somebody to a position, that one.
I'd like to move to go into executive session for the purpose of the appointment of or discussion of the employment of an individual.
Thank you, Jenna.
Second.
Brigitte seconds. Any further discussion on the motion, which I forgot to do on our last one? Seeing none, we can give it a minute and then go to board docs. Motion carries. And can we have trustees and Melanie in the breakout room, please?
Adam, you and Sean are both excused for the evening. I think you're all set.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca, let me know when you're ready for who made the motion.
Right, I'm ready.
Brenda made the motion to leave executive session.
Okay.
Donna seconded. Unanimous, but Sarah Dallas left prior to the vote.
Okay.
All right. I believe it's time for second public comment.
We have not received any public comment.
Okay. And I don't have any other business remaining for the evening. If we don't have anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn or second.
Everybody seconds tonight. Brenda makes the motion. I heard a lot of seconds. Can someone show me a hand? Donna, I see your hand. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can go to board docs and vote.
I vote yes.
So, Tom? Did we lose Tom?
No, he's still on.
All right, I just voted yes.
Yep,
Sorry.
thank you. And it's 7:59.
Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for running a
Have a
tight
good
meeting,
night.
Sarah.
Thank you.
And have we stopped? Can we just stop the stream?
Yeah, I'm trying to